What is up, and welcome to episode 4 of the No Names podcast. I'm your host, Dan Ways, and today I'm by myself. We're doing a solo episode, so naturally today's episode is going to be a little bit shorter, but how I wanted to frame these episodes is every few episodes, I'm going to do one by myself, and I'm going to recap some of the main points that I've had with my previous guests and expand on them a little bit more now that I've had time to kind of sit with it and really allow things to build in my brain and allow myself time to really convey a bigger message to all of you listening. So, without further ado, what we're going to start the episode with is how we start every episode, and that is a beverage. Today, we are sipping on the Ghost Energy Orange Cream. For those of you who know, this is the GOAT. This is one of my favorites. It was my favorite for a while, and we've had a few competitors come in just in the Ghost category. It is tough. We got a lot of flavors out there. So, without further ado, we are going to do this Be Figgy style and go one-handed crack, as you can see there. Pull it off the table. Oh man, I can't even do it. We're gonna leave it like that. The 505 boys are gonna roast me. Huge craters in the side of this thing, and we got spillage everywhere. So, one sip review, that always hits. It's just so good. All right, so there are a few points that I want to touch on today. And as I mentioned, they're going to be coming from each of my previous episodes. So in the first episode, one point that Johnny Hochstetler really hit on was his discipline early on in his career, how it carried through his entire content creation journey and is still holding true today. So the second point I had is staying true to your sound. This comes from episode 2 with James, also known as Align. He talks about how you should really just not only put your blinders on, but also just realize that at the core of you is why people are going to follow you. So staying true to your core and having that as a consistent thing as you grow as a creative or an artist, whatever it may be. The third point is when I talked with Logan Weaver in Denver for the third episode, and that is becoming a creative juggernaut. Always expanding your arsenal and becoming undeniable as a creative when it comes to being well-rounded. And lastly, the fourth point is actually, I'm going to save that to the end because I don't want to give it away just yet. There is something that I really live by as a creative, and I think it goes so much further than what it may seem, but I can't wait for you guys to hear this episode. So let's run it solo dolo this time and let's get after it. All right. So as I mentioned, the first point that I want to touch on is discipline. This comes from Johnny Hochstetler, and he really talked about early on in his career how the discipline that he had when he didn't see numbers carried through his entire career of content creation and is still staying true today. And he thinks that is one of the key points of why he's been so successful. The hard part when you're creative, and especially starting out, is you're not going to see numbers right away. And if you tie yourself to that, you're always going to be disappointed because you always think you're going to be able to perform better, everything. Now, there's points to really going after things that you want, setting goals and metrics and everything like that. There is a time and a place for that, but it doesn't necessarily have to coincide with the discipline side of things. Discipline is going to be one of your biggest factors in terms of content creation. Because if you're trying to grow on socials or you're trying to create something that people really want to resonate with and a community of people that really want to buy into what you're doing and really respond well to you as a creative and you as a person. So discipline is going to come in and be the guiding light that on the days when you don't want to do things and you come home after a long day and the last thing you want to do is batch shoot content or go about and really film anything, shoot anything, record anything, whatever it may be, that discipline is going to always say, you have to do this. You're doing this for a reason. And it's not always going to come with motivation. Motivation is something that kind of comes and goes, and you're not always going to be motivated to really create what you're trying to do. And there are going to be times when you feel low and you feel discouraged, whether you're not getting the likes you want to, you're not getting the streams you want to, or frankly, you're just having a bad day. But that discipline that you tell yourself, you sign that contract with yourself that you're going to get something done, that is truly what's going to help you in the long run. It may not seem like it in the short-term period, but in the long run, it is going to carry through and discipline is going to win every single time. And discipline is actually going to help feed into the second point that I want to talk about, which is staying true to yourself. Because if you build that discipline early on, you are going to have the foundation, the building blocks of everything that you want to create. So With discipline, you go into staying true to your sound, as James said, or as a creative, it's staying true to who you are at your core. Now, as you grow as a creative, your goals will change. Who you are shouldn't, though. Staying true to who you are as an individual and what you want to be, the worlds you want to depict, whatever you're creating is you. It's a reflection of you. It is who you are as a person. And that is why people are going to buy into you. For me as a creative, when I started out, I was in high school. I was making hype videos for sports. And that was, I thought that was exactly what I wanted to do with my life. And it started out as fun. And then I took it more seriously. I got an internship in it in sports broadcasting. And it was great. I was making hype videos. I was making recaps for games, all of this stuff. And I loved it. That was so fun, and I really got inspired by a lot of sports hype videos, especially like TCU baseball back in the day. That was my kind of thing. Then I transferred schools and I really started picking up photography. Now, usually that's just kind of the progression as a photo video person. You start in one and then you start adapting to the other, and then you have both. So I was really inspired by Instagram at the time back in 2016, 2017. It was a lot of street photographers that I really enjoyed watching. And I loved the grittiness, the urban exploring, like all of that kind of stuff. That was just something that then I began to change towards that. And as I continued to develop as a photographer, I loved the urban settings. I loved going out and shooting landscapes, like anything like that. Like I would love going on a hike and taking my camera and taking pictures of the wilderness, like everything like that. But I still had that kind of moody feel. I loved bringing what I saw in the urban side of things into the landscape side of things. And then eventually that just continued to blossom and grow. And I really started taking my creative seriously. From there, I ended up quitting my job as a digital marketing specialist and moved into the freelance world. And at that point, I was really just taking kind of any gig that I could get. From there, I ended up landing the job at Ghost. Long story short, it has been 2.5 years of an amazing journey, and it's still going and still booming like crazy. And what I used to shoot is something that I very seldom shoot now. I don't shoot a lot of urban landscapes. I don't shoot a lot of nature landscapes. I very rarely go out and take pictures, and I truly do miss it. However, the core is what stays true. The creative foundation that I laid when I was younger and the guiding light of depicting the world in the way I see it has not changed. While the goal of my creativity and my photography and videography have changed, the guiding light is still who I am as a person and how I depict my sight of the world. And I think that's why I've developed a look that is true to me and really is reflective of how I feel like I see the world. Now, as goals can change, so can your skill set. This leads me into my third point, which is becoming a creative juggernaut. So, as I mentioned, I started in video and then added photo, and they both kind of grew together, sometimes outpacing one another, but they both grew nonetheless. A rising tide raises all ships. As you become a better creative in one respective field, you begin to realize that you might need other skill sets to become more marketable as a creative. This is where becoming a creative juggernaut and building your arsenal as a creative is so crucial to becoming more well-rounded creative. When you start, you might start in photography, you might start in videography, but as you grow, you're going to learn that having those additional resources, learning to use different programs, and learning to do things that are even out of the scope of creativity. You could go from a photographer to an SEO specialist to an influencer marketing strategist. There are so many different ways that are still around that creative ballpark that will, in the end, help you grow as a creative because you're going to be able to relate to not only more people, but more clients. That is the big thing. And now this doesn't necessarily always have to relate to client work or making money at the end of the day. Sometimes you really are just building an audience, and that's where having a multitude of things that you can create about, around, or for will help you grow your audience as well. And sometimes as a creative, when you are growing, you might have 4 to 5 pillars, or you could have 3 that are really strong and they're going to help attract different people into your community. You're not always going to be dead set on one route. You might grow into different realms. And you can look at my work, for instance. So my Instagram is mainly going to be broken up into just a few categories, but it is my life. That is what I talk about. So not only are we going to be unboxing cool things like camera gear or office decor, anything along those lines, but you're also going to see my work as a photographer, a videographer, and that can be inclusive of concerts that I shoot. It can be ghost work that I really enjoy. It can be travel vlogs. It can be really anything. People are going to follow you for different reasons, and everyone has a different reason as to why they will follow you. The part that I'm getting at is knowing that no matter who you are, there are multiple things that make up who you are as a person. So trying to pigeonhole yourself into one thing sometimes isn't going to be the best thing possible for you. Don't be afraid to expand into new categories, to try new things. And the biggest key to this, as cliche as it is never stop learning. When you learn one thing and you feel pretty confident in it, learn something else. Learn something that's supplemental to it. Learn something that's completely out of thin air and you just want to try it and give it a go. Who knows? That could break down so many other walls for you. I think the biggest thing is to not be afraid of trying new things and to never stop learning. And lastly, as a creative, I think one of the biggest things is send the fucking email. And now I might talk about sending a literal email, but it goes so much deeper than that. An example for me is back in March, I saw that Quinn 92 was going to be playing a show at Northerly Island in Chicago. He wasn't playing until July. I reached out and I got an email back within a couple days that said no. And that was fine. I got it. It wasn't the world crashing down on me. And so I waited and waited and I was like, okay, I'll buy tickets. I end up getting an email a few days before the show and get brought on the team as a creative. So fast forward a couple months and I noticed that Quinn 92 is going to be back in Chicago in December. I reached back out to the team and I have to wait just a little bit and I end up getting brought on as one of the main creatives. Now, this might be, 2 shows, whatever. And at the heart of it, it started with an email that ended up getting rejected, but you never know what that email is going to lead to. This goes so much deeper than just sending a literal email. This is you putting yourself out there in situations that might make you feel uncomfortable or might make you feel like, oh, there's no point to this. Someone's going to reject it or whatever. Don't be afraid to put yourself out there and don't be afraid to take a chance. The hard part about taking a chance is the uncertainty of it, but that is also the beauty of it. Don't be afraid to put yourself in situations that you could succeed in, and you never know until you try. Now, there might be a lot of cliche references and a lot of yada yada self-motivation, but what it boils down to as creatives, we get in our head, and sometimes imposter syndrome can be a bitch. Oh my God, it sucks. Trust me, I still deal with it, and I know plenty of creatives who are crushing it that still deal with it too. So send the fucking email and don't get in your own way. Always keep creating, always keep learning, stay true to who you are as a creative, and just keep going. Now, if you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, like, share with your mom, share with your grandma, share it with your dog. I don't care. Just help your boy grow. So at the end of the day, what we were trying to accomplish here at the No Names podcast is helping creatives build a name for themselves, build a community, and go from no name to somebody in whatever industry they're in. So please, if you enjoyed this, share it with somebody, share it with anybody, and I will see you in the next episode. Peace.